Subscribe to True Tears Stories for more stories. Now, let's begin this one. They always laughed the loudest when they thought he couldn't hear them. The break room was small, just a cracked coffee machine, mismatched mugs, and an always empty cookie jar. But the laughter filled every inch of it. Eli kept his head down as he microwaved leftover pasta in a Tupperware container with a chipped lid. Behind him, the trio from marketing were huddled by the vending machine, whispering like high schoolers who never outgrew the hallway pecking order. "Did you see his shoes?" one snorted. "Skechers, I think. Or worse, off-brand Skechers. Maybe that's why he's always walking. Can't even afford gas." They laughed, hard and unfiltered. Not the kind of laugh that came from joy. The kind that made you look at someone and feel bigger because you made them feel smaller. Eli didn't turn around. He stirred the pasta with a fork and waited for the beep. He could feel the heat creeping up his neck, not from the microwave, but from the slow, familiar shame of being the punchline again. He wasn't stupid. He'd heard it before. They teased him for bringing lunch from home, for his thrift store blazer, for answering phones and logging tickets while they planned campaigns with budgets that eclipsed his entire annual salary. And what hurt more than the jokes was how often people joined in with silence. Even the kind ones, the ones who smiled in the hallway, looked away when the laughter started. That day, it wasn't the words that broke something open inside him. It was the sound of the microwave door slamming shut too hard. His own hand. A reflex. But it made the room go quiet. He didn't say anything, just walked out with his lunch. Calm. Measured. But inside, something was shifting. Back at his desk, Eli ate slowly, then opened a tab he'd been keeping hidden behind spreadsheets and customer service logs. A blank page marked only with the words, "Project Helix, Private." He hadn't told anyone about it. Not his manager, not his friends, not even his mother, who still thought he was studying for some elusive corporate certification. Helix was an idea, a software model that tracked internal workflow friction inside businesses and automatically suggested redistributions to improve efficiency. A glorified dashboard at first, but over months of late nights and silent weekends, it had grown teeth. Real logic, a sleek interface, algorithms he'd written from scratch. He didn't build it out of vengeance. At least not at first. But lately, there was something about the laughter in that break room, about the way they had said his name without saying it, that made every keystroke feel like a quiet refusal to stay in his place. Eli didn't want to make them regret their words. He wanted to make himself impossible to ignore. That night, he stayed long after the lights flickered off around him. The office emptied like it always did, quickly and without ceremony. Just the clack of heels, the snap of briefcases, and the fading elevator chime. He kept working, not because he had to, but because something had started to burn inside him. Not rage, not bitterness, resolve. It felt different, sharper, quieter, stronger, and no one saw it coming. 3 months later, Eli sat in the very same break room, but now it was empty. Not just of people, but of noise, of tension. The vending machine had been replaced with a sleek espresso bar. The cracked microwave was gone. The lights were warmer now, not that old flickering fluorescent that made everyone's skin look like yesterday's leftovers. But Eli didn't notice most of that. He was watching the download bar on his laptop tick closer to 100%, the faint hum of the machine sounding louder than it should in a room so silent. Helix was ready. Not the version he demoed in secret to a few freelancers for feedback. Not the minimum viable product he'd shared with one bold investor who agreed to a meeting in a coffee shop after hours. This was the full system, fully integrated, polished, tested, every bug debugged, every line of code tuned like a violin string. It had taken sacrifice, the kind that piles up slowly, canceled weekend plans, forgotten birthdays, eye strain and neck aches, the kind of loneliness that doesn't hit you all at once, but instead settles in quietly, like a guest who never plans to leave. Still, none of that compared to what he felt now. A kind of nervous pride, not quite joy. He hadn't let himself feel joy in a long time, but the start of something, the glimpse of a horizon. He leaned back, fingers interlocked behind his head, and stared at the ceiling. The bar hit 100%. Just like that, Helix went live. The silence was broken moments later by the buzz of his phone. The investor, Mara Fields, had sent a single line, "You're funded." He didn't react. Not outwardly. No fist pump. No exhale. But his eyes closed for just a moment longer than a blink. When he opened them, the world had changed. Mara had connected him with partners, a development team, a marketing crew, legal support. She believed in the tech, not just the dashboard or the algorithm, but in him, in Eli, the kid who was laughed at for his cheap shoes. His office desk remained untouched for a week. Then HR finally noticed. By the time his resignation letter arrived, typed and printed on fine linen paper, his LinkedIn profile had already been updated with one bold, clean title: Founder and CEO, Helix Sync Technologies. He didn't do a big announcement. No farewell cupcakes. No goodbyes. He didn't need them to clap for him on the way out. He didn't want their applause. He wanted their attention, and he got it. 2 months later, when his former company's CEO reached out, their productivity was slipping. Employee retention was dipping. They'd heard about a platform that could diagnose workflow toxicity and rebuild a better culture. Helix. "Can we book a demo?" the email read. Eli stared at it for 5 minutes before typing a simple reply. "Happy to schedule something. Let me know who I'll be meeting." He already knew. He just wanted to hear the name. When the reply came, confirming a meeting with their entire upper management team, including the head of marketing, he leaned back again, that same quiet breath leaving his lips. The meeting was set in a glass high-rise downtown, his new office. They walked in with hesitant smiles, hands folded, and tension in their shoulders. They barely recognized him in the tailored navy suit. Or maybe they did, and that was worse. The head of marketing, Jared, looked uncomfortable. Good. He should be. Eli remembered every laugh. He welcomed them warmly, professionally, smiled just enough, but not too much. He walked them through Helix's capabilities, carefully detailing every feature they would have loved to have had when he worked under them. Every blind spot they'd overlooked, now mapped, measured, and monetized. Jared didn't ask any questions. He just nodded, silent. And Eli? He didn't gloat. He didn't need to. The real win was never about revenge. It was about respect. the kind no one could ever take back once it was earned. The days that followed blurred together in a quiet, focused momentum. Eli's calendar was booked wall to wall, but he didn't mind. It was a different kind of exhaustion now, a satisfying one, the kind that meant progress was being made with each passing hour. For the first time, his mind wasn't split between surviving the workday and dreaming of a different life. He was already living the version he used to imagine on late nights, riding the bus home. Head pressed against cold windows, fingers numb from typing. Helix was gaining attention. The press write-up in Start Tech brought in a flurry of demo requests. Investors called without prompting. Eli's inbox, once a wasteland of ignored memos and chain CCs, now buzzed with real opportunity. There was power in finally being taken seriously, but also a responsibility. That weight never left his chest. And then, one afternoon, while reviewing analytics on client adoption rates, he got the message. It was from Sarah, not the HR director, not the investor. Sarah, the one who had laughed the hardest at that bar table months ago. The one whose words still echoed when he laid down at night sometimes, not because they hurt anymore, but because they'd become a spark, a punctuation mark, a vow he made to himself. Never again. "Hey, stranger," the message read. "Saw an article about Helix. Didn't know you were doing such big things. Congrats. Would love to catch up." He stared at it, blinking, reading it twice to be sure he hadn't misread the tone. It was casual, almost breezy, but underneath, he sensed it. The kind of message that wasn't sent out of pure curiosity, but from realization, recognition, maybe even regret. He closed his laptop for the first time in hours. The sun was setting, casting a golden line across his desk. He sat still, letting the light hit him, warm, quiet. Then, finally, he replied, "Hey, Sarah, appreciate that. Life's been busy. Hope you're doing well." No invitation to meet, no bitterness either. Just boundaries. The kind that come from self-respect, not pride. But it wasn't over. 2 days later, she replied again. "Any chance you're free Friday? I was thinking of stopping by the Helix office. Maybe we could grab a coffee?" Eli sat back, letting the cursor blink as the message stared up at him. He remembered the exact moment she had said it. The smirk, the tilt of her head. "Eli, come on, be real. You think this idea will make you money? You'll be lucky to break even. Some people just aren't built to win." It hadn't been cruel exactly, just careless, like she didn't realize she'd thrown a match on gasoline. And maybe she hadn't. Maybe she had. He debated not responding at all. But something in him, it wasn't vengeful, just curious, wanted to see it through. "Sure," he wrote. 2:30 Friday. I'll let the front desk know." Friday came. She was 10 minutes early, same sharp hair, same confident walk, but there was something different in her eyes. A softness, or maybe uncertainty. Either way, she hesitated before sitting across from him in the glass-walled conference room. "This place is beautiful," she said, looking around. "I had no idea you were doing so well." He nodded, fingers lightly folded in front of him. "Took a while. Worth it." There was a pause, one that lingered too long. "I wanted to say," she started, looking down at the table, "I think I was kind of a jerk. Back then." Eli didn't rush to comfort her. He let the silence hold. "Thank you," he said finally. That means something. She looked up, eyes meeting his. You know, if you ever wanted to, I don't know, grab dinner sometime, catch up properly. There it was. He didn't smile. He didn't scowl. He just tilted his head, studying her the way he might study market trends, calmly, analytically. I don't think that's a good idea, he said softly. She blinked, a little caught off guard. Oh, yeah, no, totally. I just thought you were right about one thing, he said, standing. I wasn't built to win. I built myself to win. Then he opened the door for her, polite and steady. When she left, he didn't look back. He had no need to anymore. The following Monday, Eli walked into the boardroom with the kind of quiet confidence that didn't need to announce itself. It was in the way his shoulders sat straighter than they used to, and how his tone held no hint of hesitation when he spoke to the team. He had become the kind of leader he once doubted he could be, the kind others now turned to instinctively when things needed fixing, steering, deciding. That morning, the announcement had gone live. Helix had secured Series B funding, and not just from anyone. A former Fortune 100 CEO had joined the advisory board, and one of the biggest venture firms on the coast was now backing them. It was the kind of milestone most founders only dream about. But Eli didn't celebrate with champagne or loud declarations. He stayed late instead, walking the floor, stopping by every desk, checking in with the people who had joined when it was just 6 of them, squeezed into a rented co-working room with spotty Wi-Fi. Now, they had 2 floors in a downtown high-rise, a gym, a meditation room, catered lunches, and yet Eli still wore the same beat-up leather watch he'd owned for 10 years. Some things he kept unchanged, not out of sentiment, but as reminders. He stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the roof. It had become his favorite place in the building, a quiet overlook with views of the city, far from the hum of ringing phones and glowing screens. The breeze was cool up there, brushing past his shirt collar. Lights twinkled across the skyline like distant stars. For a moment, he stood in silence, letting the weight of everything settle in his chest. Not heavy, just real. He pulled his phone out and opened an old photo buried deep in his gallery. A picture from the break room at his last job. The paycheck stub sitting beside a half-eaten sandwich. His name typed beside a number that didn't even cover rent. He used to stare at that photo whenever he felt like giving up. It was the thing that had fueled his fire more than any vision board or motivational quote ever could. That same photo had been screenshotted, framed, and hung on the wall of Helix's entryway last week. A reminder to the whole team of where they came from. He opened another text, one from Darnell. Man, can't believe you did it. The whole crew's talking. Proud of you. You hiring? Eli had chuckled when he read it the first time. There was no bitterness, only irony. Life's strange full circles. He tapped back a reply. Appreciate that. Let's catch up soon. But he didn't offer a job. He didn't need to teach anyone a lesson anymore. The real lesson had already been lived. A few moments later, his assistant buzzed through to let him know a young intern was waiting to speak with him. Someone fresh out of college, nervous and eager, full of ideas and hope. He smiled to himself, slipped the phone into his pocket, and headed for the elevator. Because while proving people wrong had once been the fuel, now Helping someone else believe they could rise too had become the fire. Downstairs, the intern stood just inside the office's sliding glass doors, clutching a folder like it was armor. Eli walked over, offered his hand, and smiled. "First day?" he asked. The intern nodded, wide-eyed. "Yeah, I've heard a lot about this place. About you." Eli chuckled softly. "Well, then I hope we live up to the hype. Come on, I'll show you around." As they walked the polished floors together, Eli pointed out the departments, introduced a few familiar faces, and ended the tour with the framed photo hanging near reception. "That's your paycheck?" the intern asked, incredulous. "Was," Eli said. "It's a reminder of what's possible." And as they stood there together, the older man and the new kid, one thing was certain. No one was laughing at his paycheck now. The office dimmed as twilight rolled in, casting soft golden rays across the lobby's marble floor. Eli lingered near the photo a moment longer after the intern walked away, watching the reflection of the past framed behind glass and pride. The building buzzed with the quiet hum of a company still alive after hours, low laughter from a meeting room, footsteps echoing from down the hall, a printer warming back to life. But here, in this small corner, where memory lived and ambition had bloomed, it was peaceful. He thought back to that night outside the bar, the way she'd said it, chin high, a smirk barely veiled by her lipstick. "You can't afford me." At the time, it cut deeper than he let on, not because of the insult itself, but because part of him had believed she was right. He hadn't been enough, not rich enough, not polished enough, not future husband enough. He had worn his drive like a second skin, but it hadn't yet turned into anything shiny. Now, years later, the ring he'd once thought he'd buy her was outmatched by the one he designed on a whim for someone else, someone who hadn't asked for money, but believed in the value of patience, integrity, and time. Funny how the things we chase lose their sparkle once we outgrow the need to prove ourselves. He turned off the lights as he walked back to his office, sat down, leaned back, and closed his eyes, not out of exhaustion, but in reflection. Because the loudest victories aren't always the ones we post online. Sometimes they're quiet, private, measured not in applause, but in the peace that settles in your chest when you finally become the person they said you never could be.